In many of the economic theories, it's claimed that knowledge is the new engine of the economy. It's not. Knowledge is only the fuel.
Volvo, Spotify, Minecraft ประเทศเล็กๆอย่างสวีเดนทำไมเขาถึงได้รับการขนานนามว่าเป็นซิลิคอนวัลเลย์ของยุโรป
So if you only have knowledge, you only have fuel. So research creates a lot of fuel, but it's there. You cannot do it. You cannot do anything. It's not valuable until somebody puts in an engine.
Wow.
And entrepreneurship is the engine that takes the fuel and creates value, movement.
ความสำเร็จนี้ไม่ได้เกิดบังเอิญครับ
Vinnova is Sweden's innovation agency. It's a governmental agency, the first agency in the world that was based on the theories of innovation systems.
ผมอยากให้ฟังจริงๆเพราะว่าเขาสามารถเล่าเรื่องที่เราได้ยินกันบ่อยๆคำว่านวัตกรรม Deep Tech ความหมายของผู้ประกอบการได้เข้าใจง่ายมากๆ
Culture. We have this kind of consensus leadership. It's not command and control. Sometimes it could be very slow if there's a lot of different opinions, but it really allows the creativity of people to come forward.
The Secret Sauce
สวัสดีครับผมเคนนครินทร์และนี่คือ The Secret Sauce
What's your secret?
It's once again time to exercise our future thinking muscles.
And Sweden ranked high, like today, on various innovation indexes.
สวีเดนครองอันดับสูงใน European Innovation Scoreboard ล่าสุดในปี 2025 นะครับเขาเป็นประเทศที่มีนวัตกรรมที่ดีที่สุดในสหภาพยุโรปแล้วก็ยังผลิตยูนิคอร์นและนวัตกรรมดังระดับโลกมากมายแม้ประชากรเพียงเล็กน้อยเท่านั้นครับและยังเป็นผู้นำด้าน Clean Tech และเศรษฐกิจหมุนเวียนหรือ Circular Economy เบื้องหลังความสำเร็จนี้ไม่ได้เกิดบังเอิญครับแต่ว่าตั้งแต่ปี 2001 สวีเดนมีองค์กรที่ชื่อว่า Vinnova หรือหน่วยงานนวัตกรรมแห่งชาติสวีเดนที่คอยทำหน้าที่จัดสรรทุนประจำปีแล้วก็เป็นแม่งานในการผลักดันให้เกิดการเปลี่ยนแปลงเชิงระบบวันนี้ผมมีโอกาสได้พูดคุยกับ Chief Strategy Advisor ของ Vinnova Many people, when we talk about Sweden, is a small country, but often called Silicon Valley of Europe. Right? Do you agree with that? And what makes this so successful innovation?
Let me take you back in history also. You know, in the beginning of the 19th century, Sweden was one of the poorest countries in Europe. But something happened during the mid of 19th century, 1850, 1860, and some economists have claimed that Sweden was the world's Silicon Valley between 1860 and 1920. During that time, we created all these big, companies that we have today, like Ericsson, SKF, Sandvik, Astra, which is not AstraZeneca, Alfa Laval, and others. So it was a tremendous period of development in Sweden, created by a lot of institutional changes that really unleashed creativity among people, regardless of your background or wealth or whatever. You could become an entrepreneur and you could develop your companies and succeed. And Sweden at that time developed an ability not to be the first inventors in the world, but really being those that are able to take inventions to industrial scalable things, which created these big companies. So one of the things that Sweden has been good on is entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship, besides, of course, the investment in human resources. That's very important. So when you compare to Silicon Valley, there are certain things that are similar. Like, for example, today, I noticed that it would be interesting, for example, Stockholm, it's number one region in Europe now. I don't know if you looked at the latest regional innovation scoreboard that was published this summer. Stockholm is number one in Europe.
Wow.
And Sweden has 3 regions among the top 10 regions. And there's some similarity like in Stockholm and Silicon Valley. It's the density of resources, capital, talent, international talents. It's a very international kind of oriented region. It's usual things like KTH, Karolinska, incubator. So the ecosystem is quite strong compared to Silicon Valley. But of course, then are some challenges and differences, I would say, still. Like my feeling is that when you go to Silicon Valley, the corporate fabric or the corporate culture related to startups is different than in the Sweden and the Stockholm area. We are still trying to get corporates to collaborate with startups and SMEs on a business-wise, not only R&D-wise, but business-wise. That's something that the Silicon Valley has that we don't have. Because my feeling is that when you are a corporate there, you are entrepreneurial, still driven. It's not the classical corporate culture. So these companies always look for interesting startups or interesting innovators or entrepreneurs to bring them renewal in their businesses. We don't really have that kind of culture still in Sweden. We're working quite a lot with it. That's one of the priorities we have in our strategic development. So that's one. And another thing that at least researchers have pointed out that, when you look at the system like Silicon Valley, it's so important to have the interconnection between those that are providing capital, talent, support and such. So the connectedness really determines the outcomes. Usually you focus on one thing. We don't have capital, so we have to have this VC fund or this. But you're not focusing on the connectedness between them. And Silicon Valley has really, really good connectedness because it has deal makers that really create the connectedness between academics, between investors, entrepreneurs, and so we don't have the same density of those kind of deal makers. There was some study several years ago when you could see that in the Stockholm area, there's a few handful people that have been really key to what has happened in Stockholm. Only a handful or two handful of people. It's really these kind of things you have to think about when you.
So tell me more about Vinnova. What is Vinnova mission, value, or?
Vinnova is Sweden's innovation agency. It's a governmental agency now reporting under the Ministry of Climate and Enterprise. It was founded in 2001 and it was the first agency in the world that was based on the theories of innovation systems. Wow. Previously, before in the 90s and before, basically you always had this kind of research policies. Innovation policies was not really something that people used as a concept when they developed policies. Around the shift to the 21st century, innovation policy became very of focus for governments. And it was also based that a researcher looked into questions like, why is Silicon Valley's innovation performance so much better than, for example, Sweden's or Stockholm's? And what they came up with was that really it's the context, the innovation system, the way that the interplay between research, industry, the society, the politics, that interplay created foundations for innovation performance for companies. So you have to look not only on taking research into the market, you have to look at the life conditions that companies are facing when they try to pursue their developments. So Vinnova was really one of the first agency in the world that was created upon the concept of innovation systems. So besides our missions to really mobilize for innovation development, promote innovation developments in Sweden and fund, we are of course one of the largest funder of early stage innovation development. We also have the mission to really improve the Swedish innovation system and strengthen capabilities and capacities for development innovation in Sweden so that we become competitive, so that we can address sustainability is very important for us. Now lately resilience and security has also become very important. Because what you have to know is that in innovation most things fail. Outcomes are not normally distributed. They are powerfully distributed. Everyone is living on outliers. So it's also a numbers game. You have to have a lot of efforts to get some big unicorns or gazelles or whatever that really are successful.
Wow, interesting that your mission was created by the government to make the nation more, we'll say, innovative and can compete with other countries.
Yeah.
So my question is, if you have to summarize the success of Sweden in terms of innovation, what would it be? What is the recipe of successful innovation?
I think it's, first of all, you should never copycat. But in Sweden, I think if I would count from the top of my head the things that really matter is of course that you have talent and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship is one of the key aspects. The second important aspect with talent, and talent has to come in many different. You have to have engineering talent. You have to focus on entrepreneurship and such. The second one is the ecosystem and the ecosystem properties. And ecosystems, in my view, creates the life conditions for a venture or a company. And Sweden has been good in one thing that you have to have is collaborative culture. And in Sweden, we usually talk about 4 waves of innovation. The first wave, which was between 1860 and 1920. The second one between 1940 and 1990. And that's where we got this good collaboration between industry, academia, government. So that kind of Triple Helix collaboration is very important. We didn't have at that point capital, free for ventures. So now we also have good resources on venture capital. Another aspect is an international viewpoint. Most companies, we are a very small market. We are very good, connected up, especially to US and Europe. So you get this international aspect and connectedness that Sweden has, which is so important from the early stages until you export. We have a very strong export focus. And then I would probably put the Swedish leadership also, culture. We have this kind of consensus leadership. So it frees anyone that has an idea, can come up with it and drive it. It's not command and control. So usually the management and the leadership, they allow things to happen and you have these consensus discussions on where to go. Sometimes it could be very slow if there's a lot of different opinions, but it really allows the creativity of people to come forward, which is so important. So that kind of, I would add consensus leadership to this.
So I think I will take a deep dive each topics. So first, entrepreneurship. Why is this so important? How do you create entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship?
Many people think that entrepreneurship is something that you are born with. It's part of your DNA. I'm not of that opinion. You can learn it. If you have met a really good scientist in, let's say, the 1500s and such like Da Vinci or something, you would probably say that, it's in the DNAs.
Born to be.
And the government's role is to find these persons that have this DNA and then take off all the hinders for them so they can do good research. But then came the scientific method. So scientific method taught people to do good science. And now we have good researchers and scientists all over the world. And not all of them get the Nobel Prize, but they are good scientists and do very good things in the society. And the scientific method also changes the society and the social ladder. So shoemakers' children doesn't have to become shoemakers. You can, through education, move yourself in the social ladder. So that was really important. And I would say, like research Saraswatis, who have been studying serial entrepreneurship is of that kind.
Wow.
So if we would teach entrepreneurship to even in the kindergartens and create this kind of ability to approach problems in an entrepreneurial way, we would probably change the society to the better. Not all of them becomes Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or whatever, but they will be good entrepreneurs. To be an entrepreneurial person doesn't mean that you start companies. It's an approach to challenges and problems. It has at least 3 components in my view. One is that you cannot predict success. You can only experience it.
Agree.
So you have to run a learning process, an experimentally learning process. So you experiment, you have an idea why this. You experiment with affordable loss because most things fail. And then you show opportunities, you lower risk, and then you take the next step. So it's an experimentally learning process. And it's driven by affordable loss-driven resource attraction. If you go to an MBA, you learn how to allocate resources.
Exactly.
You get money from investors, you get staff from your boss, and then you have to allocate them in such a way so you meet the business objectives of your organization. Now, an entrepreneurial process is completely different. It's about affordable, loss-driven resource allocation. I have to get you to work for me, but I cannot pay your salary. Somebody else to buy from me. I don't have anything to show up. I have only these kind of prototypes or whatever. I have somebody else to invest in me, even though I don't have any assets. So it's a resource attraction process. So that's the second property you have to learn. And the third part is that innovation doesn't happen inside brains. It's happen in between brains. It's a co-creation process. So it's a co-creation process that we make together. And the important ingredient in that co-creation is that it's made by self-selected stakeholders.
Wow.
And that's why it's so important with this ask process, because if I'm posing this question to you, then I know after a while, will you be my self-selected stakeholder in the co-creation? And your views on what we should do together, of course, changes my view. And together we become stronger. Now we are two to attract resources.
Wow.
And then we might get you on the board, and then we are three, and your network and my network and your network will be the network to attract resources with. And that's the entrepreneurial process. And you can apply it almost to any.
This is science-based.
This is science-based. Of course, somebody will be better than others, but basically it's a method, it's a mind, it's a skill set that you can train and develop.
Do you have official program or school that try to?
Yes, we try to. One of the things that we are doing from Vinnova is, of course, to stimulate and promote this kind of educational efforts in universities and in incubators, because incubators are also a very good engine for developing entrepreneurship in a country. It's not only for developing startups, because as I said, most things fail, but an incubator infrastructure, an incubator accelerator infrastructure, like if you would have in Thailand, it's an engine for creating and teaching entrepreneurship.
Wow.
Which you can also, of course, do in university, and basically you should do it earlier also.
I would love to hear more about this, but besides entrepreneurship, you mentioned innovation system and talent density.
Yeah.
So could you explain more about this? Or Triple Helix, right?
Yeah, as I said, co-creation is really important, and that requires collaborative efforts between different kind of organizations and people. And one of the things that is really a signum of Vinnova's initiatives, that we always try to get those that are needed to spur innovation together, creating networks, creating collaborative efforts. So that's almost part of everything we do. And one of the interesting things with the ecosystem approach, rather than the traditional consortia approach, is that you try to create also non-contractual relationships. If we are to collaborate, we not always need a legal agreement.
Yes.
If we agree on something that we together, let's try to make Thailand better. We don't have to have an agreement on that. We work a lot with collaborative efforts and collaborative initiatives. Some of them are contractual, some of them are non-contractual. And of course, as you pointed out, talent is so important, to develop talent. And we were talking earlier this week about how can this country, Sweden, which now we are 10.5 million people, Bangkok is probably as large or larger. And we have been at least in 8 industrial sector created internationally successful big corporates in this small country. Wow. Most people say you should focus on something. And in Sweden, we have like success in at least in 8 sectors, which is quite strange for a small country. But I think one of the more important part is that it's so easy to focus on where will we make the money, which areas will we make money, which areas will we export in, which areas will we... I think that's, from my personal point of view, wrong approach, because you never know. You cannot predict success. Nobody knows, and especially if it's top-down telling that all the value creation will be in biofuels or in some, usually that's wrong.
Whoa.
But if you create people with talent and competencies, they know entrepreneurship, they know about artificial intelligence, about biotech, and let them diversify their knowledge as much as possible.
So how about the role of government, academia, or industry? How should they work together?
I think that they should all work together. As I said, in Sweden it has so been important that government, academia and industry have been working in effectively together. And one change that have taken place during the last, I would say, 10 years is that previously government should not intervene unless there was a market failure. So you wait, and if you have a market failure, you try to fix it because the market is not fixing itself. Now we are working more actively with the industry and academia because one of the important things, especially when sustainability has become very important in society, we have climate challenges, we have health challenges, is that the government has to be part of creating the directionality for the society. But you don't create it top down, like the government should not say, this is the future. It's a co-creation process.
Okay.
So you co-create directionality with the society and involve so the civil society in it. So, and that's what part of the third generation innovation policies is to be active in creating together this directionality for society. Another new aspect of government role is also that I usually say innovation is never limited by supply. There also, always more things that than people can consume. It's always limited by demand. So the government should be involved also in articulating and directing demand.
Create more demand.
Yeah, phase out things that are not part of the directionality you want to do, and stimulate demand of things that are important for the directionality. And one thing that we are working, and I've been working quite a lot, is innovation procurement. The government procures innovation, and you procure things that doesn't exist.
Wow.
For example, when it has been very important in Swedish industrial history, when Sweden digitalized its telecom networks, the Swedish telecom administration bought an exchange that didn't exist. They bought the AXE exchange from Ericsson that didn't exist. So they co-created the exchange with Ericsson, which became the platform for prosperity for Ericsson, but also prosperity for Sweden in digitalizing the telecom network. Vattenfall, who is the government organization for energy production, electricity, they bought distribution technology, energy distribution or electricity distribution technology from ASEA, now ABB, which was really pivotal for the development of ASEA in that case in there. So these kind of collaborative things like using innovation procurement, providing kind of support that Vinnova has, that the government is really important in those aspects. And we are not using innovation procurements sufficiently in Europe. And I just pointed out during this week that Thailand should really be doing this. Many times when instead of having looked like you buy from me, I buy from you.
Right.
If we sell like Gripen to Thailand could do innovation procurement.
How would you describe the current state of innovation ecosystem today? I mean, in a global technology ecosystem, I think it has changed a lot after the rise of China or even the tariff war from the US.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think Sweden is characterized by, it's an open society. Innovation has no borders. To really collaborate across organizational and country borders is so important because many of the sustainability challenges are not national. We have to address them together. And the geopolitical situation that has evolved during the last few years is not really good for that.
But in terms of innovation, how do you close the gap, or how do you...
Closing the gap, one of the things that I think one of the drawbacks personal, which I look when I look at Europe contra China and US, is that we have been in Europe and Sweden talking about research and innovation for so many years. And that research and innovation is the solution for closing the gap, and it's so important. But nobody's talking on how does research become innovation.
Agree.
Everybody is talking about research and innovation in Europe, but nobody's talking how does research become innovation. And innovation becomes, in that narrative or rhetoric, like an extension of research. It's not. Research is about developing and validating knowledge, because it's not only developing, it's also validating that things that you come up with are very true. So science and research is something that tries to explain the current world, looking back and looking where we stand. Innovation is about developing and validating value creation and businesses. It's a complete different thing. And the bridge between those, that's entrepreneurship. You know, in many of the economic theories, it's claimed that knowledge is the engine, the new engine of the economy. It's not. Knowledge is only the fuel. So if you only have knowledge, you only have fuel. So research creates a lot of fuel, but it's there. You cannot do it. You cannot do anything. It's not valuable until somebody puts in an engine.
I love this. Wow.
And entrepreneurship is the engine that takes the fuel and creates value, movement.
Wow.
And then the demand utilizes that. So you have to have knowledge, create fuel, and you have to make sure that it's high quality fuel. You have to have the engine, the entrepreneurship, to make value out of it, and you have to have the demand that utilizes this movement into something that is good for humanity and Earth and so on.
Wow.
In Europe, we are missing this. We are not very focused on the engine. We have a lot of fuel, but we have difficulties in utilizing the fuel into movement and economic growth. And
Right.
the good thing is that the new strategies around the startup, scale-up, and innovation is now focusing and realizing this. So I hope for the next 5 to 10 years we will see a different development in Europe.
Wow. We have fuel, we have engine, talent, and we also should have money.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So I heard that Sweden invests heavily, about more than billion Swedish krone per year, right? So how do you prioritize your money and make it effective?
That's a difficult question. What we try to do, for example, now when we look forward now, one of the waves of innovation that we are trying to ride on is deep tech innovations. And deep tech is not technology. Many people think that deep tech is about technology. It's not. Technology is only technology as such is more fuel than. So deep tech is really an approach. It's an approach of utilizing scientific discovery, advanced engineering, new technologies to really address societal challenges in a disruptive way.
Wow.
So it's problem-oriented. It utilizes scientific discovery in advanced engineering and entrepreneurship to really get breakthrough performance in a new way. Like we have one company that we have been supporting, Novatron, looking at fusion energy, new way of creating energy or new materials around graphene or something like that. The third part is that deep tech development utilizes state-of-the-art research, but pushes it also. So you push the state-of-the-art, so you have an impact on the research done in your country. And the fourth component, which you were hinting on, this capital and resources, because usually these are, first of all, they are complex and capital intensive. They are capital intensive already very early. So you have to have available capital in these risky phases in order to be to have that kind of fuel to develop the venture. But they are also systemic in such a way that no single startup can solve, the climate challenge.
Yes.
It's a collaborative effort. It has to be a co-creation effort. So you have to have components from other parts. So you have to look it in a systemic way rather than focusing on individual startups. So in a society with more of a portfolio thinking, or which components or which part do we have to have in order to be addressing this problem. That's also a challenge in deep tech, that you have to think not only on individual ventures, but you have to think about the components in a systemic way that really solves the problem they are trying to address. If you want to have fusion energy in your society, it's not one start. It probably from regular things to startup things to corporates to distribution in the society, so infrastructure, and basically also always think about the regulatory or the institutional framework for that. For example, today we're facing a situation when you talk to fusion companies, they say that they have to follow the regulatory framework for nuclear plants. And they are not part of it. They are completely different animals. So you have to, all these things have to evolve together in order to be really successful. And that's a challenge. And government has a real important role in innovation journey.
Could you explain more about the investment philosophy? I mean, what is your KPI and how to get the best outcomes? When you put your money...
when we put, there's two different levels. First one is where do we put, distribute our budget. And today, for example, we have, I don't remember, is it 5, 6, 7 technologies when it comes to creating fuel. So we have, for example, now we prioritize AI, we prioritize digitalization, we prioritize technology for developing the energy sector. We look at biotech that really helps our health challenges. We look at new materials that create more sustainable products and production. So there's certain priorities that, of course, we then, and that's where you have early phases. Within our mission, you look at what kind of systemic failures have you, what we talked about, which is with the life conditions. Now, one of the in Sweden and Europe is sufficient growth capital. When you start, it's quite easy to get some money to get starting. But if you're in a success path, you need a lot of money because it's capital intensive. How do you mobilize growth capital in an effective way? And that's a challenge we have in Sweden. We look at if we can with small money catalyze growth capital. That's another area where we want to allocate. The third one is, of course, when we look at proposals on ventures and developments within companies, to see that which ones do we believe in? Which ones do we believe in? Like we had a closing of a call right now on innovative startups, and we got over 1,000 applicants, startups that wanted to get support, funding support. So we have to assess those companies in order to see which ones are really meeting, and now we prioritize like competitiveness, sustainability, resilience, and security. So which ones are the best ones to support that directionality we believe that Sweden and Europe will take. So those are like, at least where I work, 3 different aspects we look into.
Well, thank you. I think your answer reminds me of one company called Northvolt, right?
Yeah.
I think they face some, I would say, setbacks.
They are bankrupt.
Yeah, bankrupt. So what have you learned, or what have government learned from this, and how should we, overcome this challenge?
I think there's several setbacks, of course, and I said that most things fail, so it's not quite natural to fail. But these which we have seen, setbacks in successful companies or successful ventures, I would say, in Sweden, basically mostly they made mistakes in their strategies. I would say in Northvolt case, their narrative was really attractive, and they got real traction from the market. They got orders of production, in some way continued selling promises rather than focusing on fixing the production. And if you don't fulfill the promises to the customers, you are dead. So I don't understand why they didn't try to focus on fulfilling their promises rather than creating new promises. So it's more a company study. But one of the things that you can learn from many of these kind of Northvolts and others, it's that it's really easy to scale too early. And then, of course, the failure becomes large. I meet a lot of, deep tech companies, for example, that they have done, 10 grams or 1 kilo in the research labs. And now they have to move to 50 kilo. Or they have to build a factory. And they need 100 million or more to build this factory. And when I ask them, okay, but have you really validated the business? No, they do it in an engineering way. And then it becomes very costly to fail. Rather than trying to really cheaply validate the business and the most key factors that they will succeed on. When I was working with investment, one of the most important questions you could pose to an entrepreneur is that, why do you think you will be successful? Can you answer me with that? If you cannot go back home and come back when you have the answer. And then it could be technological success factors or commercial or regulatory or whatever. And then I would say, okay, which are the deal killers of those assumptions? Now, how can you cheaply, with affordable loss, validate those?
Wow.
Okay, I can give you the money to do that validation, the first step. Go back and do it, and then you come back to me and say, no, what did you learn? What are the success factors now? Why do you think you will be successful now? And we try to learn also our companies that we invest. We have now 52 deep tech companies. I call it discovery-driven planning. You allow yourself to, after the test, to do everything again. If you have to change direction, do that. You are not caught by the proposal you had or the business plan or the idea you had.
Sometimes you have to pivot.
Yeah, you pivot. You have to pivot, and sometimes large, sometimes small. So that's a way of working forward in these kind of circumstances.
Wow.
And many of the failures is that you have continued and invested too much rather than validating deal killer things. So we see a lot of companies where you have assumptions like what kind of quality waste have, and then the reality is the input factors were not there. It becomes too expensive, or like you think that AI will automate everything for you, and then you realize it will not. Usually these kind of individual strategical decisions that take you to disaster, or you pivot too late.
I think it would be nice if every entrepreneur can get your question.
Yeah. I think you should always start with that question.
Yeah. Ask yourself.
Yeah.
Of that question.
And really question yourself. How can I make sure that my assumptions about my success can be validated as cheaply as possible? And if it's not true, then it's never too late to give up, pivot, and go another direction.
Oh, great, amazing. So we come to a final part. I think because you here in Thailand, I think you have seen many places, meet with entrepreneurs and also policymakers. So from your observation, how do you view Thailand as a innovation hub, or do you have any recommendations for us?
I think there's certain things that at least you can observe. One is that you have enormous resources. You have fruits, vegetables in the food industry, you have talent. So you have all kind of input factors that should be really interesting to pursue, and you have the tourism, and you have a lot of good things that you can pursue. But then when you look at, my feeling is that there's a lot of fragmentation. You have a lot of, funding agencies, silos in academics, and you don't get this kind of collaborative climate between corporates, between academics, between startups, which strive for the same thing. So that's another thing that I would recommend in some way. I don't know how the solution, because it's cultural and such, that you can address. The third one we discussed this week, and that is the capital market, which seems to be, you don't have early stage good capital market to support ventures in the early phases. And of course, if you don't get investment ready things, the next part in the food chain does not work well. And then one of the things that I was really recommending is that if you want to pursue the venture capital model, you have to have a good, attractive exit market. And that's one of the things that we have challenges in Europe. Everybody thinks we need more and more and venture capital. But the business model of venture capital is that if I invest in you, I have to get my shareholdings liquid within the fund lifetime.
Yes.
And I have to maximize my shareholder value.
Agree.
So I have to take your company to the market where I get maximum shareholder value. So if I can get more shareholder value in Singapore than in Thailand, I will sell it to Singapore.
Wow, fair enough.
So you get an export of companies rather than an industrial development in Thailand. And we are in Sweden exporting too much of promising companies to US. We don't have an attractive exit market still and Europe doesn't have it either. We have to develop that, and that is something. And if you have an exit market, then of course, because there was statistics this week that it's really difficult to raise a fund in Thailand in later and growth stages. And of course, it will be difficult because if you don't have good exit conditions, why should limited partners put any money in funds? They can get better return on investment or land or housing or whatever. So if you create an attractive exit market, then limited partners, people or organizations with money will say, oh, this will be a good investment. I put you in your fund, and you can then use that to invest in growth stages or later stages in companies. But you also have to start to get, because I said it's a numbers game. We live on outliers, so you have to have a high activity in the early stages and allow those very cheaply to either succeed or die. And there was this research some time ago looking at Europe and US. And in Europe, most of these ventures, they didn't grow and they didn't die. They stay
Stuck in the middle.
In the US, you either grow or die.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of dynamic is needed in an entrepreneurial economy. And that's one of my favorite topics is also that Europe needs an entrepreneurial economy. We have a managed economy, which is favoring existing companies and unstable. So we need an entrepreneurial economy to drive this.
Agree. I think it happens same here in Thailand. So last question. I think we cannot do this alone. So we should collaborate.
Absolutely.
Like you mentioned a lot. What kind of collaboration are you seeing between Thailand and Sweden?
I think there's a lot of, basically you start with industrial collaborations, not only corporate, but also across, the chain of companies from ventures to corporates and find areas where we have mutual benefits. One of my favorites is, of course, life science and food, the combination to create healthy things for people. We are also pursuing food tech. You are good also in health production, and we were very good and we have in production, but now we are going back to that because everything is not only knowledge and in deep tech a lot of things is physical production.
Yes.
So production becomes very important, which is also an area. And of course, infrastructure and telecoms and ICT. And so these and that kind of collaboration covers everything from creating fuel to creating engines to creating demand that utilizes what the engine really creates.
Wow, that's the perfect bottom line. Thank you so much, Mr. Shil. Thank you so much for very insightful conversation.
Thank you.
And hope to see you
I enjoyed
again.
it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณครับ